Good evening, everybody. We're honored to have with us Tuesday night special guest, Rabbi Mendel Rapoport, is one of the shluchim at the University of Chicago. Rabbi, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Welcome to our Zoom and to our little community here. Tell us a little background. How long have you been at the University of Chicago? What are your particular responsibilities there? What is it like at the University of Chicago? And then we'll bring things up to current speed. What's your backstory?
Sure. So I don't know how far you want to go back, but my wife and I have been living in Hyde Park in right near the University of Chicago campus for about 2 years. My wife actually grew up here. Her parents started the Chabad at University of Chicago about 22 years ago. And it developed into mostly focusing on the undergraduate community or serving the undergraduate community. And many people don't know that the University of Chicago actually has more graduate students than undergrads. So there's a pretty significant graduate community here. So my wife and I moved here 2 years ago to expand Chabad's reach and to engage with a different demographic with the graduate student community. And that's what we do full time. We work with the professional students, the science students in the different PhD departments, master students, policy students, a wide, colorful range of different aspirations and career goals, but a lot of Jewish students.
So 2 years you're working there, the high level students, graduate students, University of Chicago or prestigious universities, and you're doing your thing, your classes and so on. And then October 7th occurs. So if you could take us to your personal experience. Where were you? How did you learn about it? And what was the immediate reaction in the community that you deal with?
That's a good question. So
Yes, good questions.
I was in Shul on Simchas Torah morning. I don't remember what times it was, but I remember a particular student, Jay, whose parents are French and British, came running in to Chabad House telling us what's going on. Obviously, throughout the day, more and more students came, and I mean, a mix of giving us updates and also just like in the days, I guess. It was interesting because we make a big push for Simchas Torah, especially for students, something that is an opportunity for them to celebrate one of the most joyous occasions of Yiddishkeit, of Judaism. And a lot of students wanted to know how we were going to dance. And we ended up having a very large crowd of students. We had dancing, we had a Farbrengen afterwards. I don't think looking back now, people may not be able to relate to like how little we knew. Like it was just very murky. I mean, once we spoke to people in Israel, we found that us Americans knew a lot more of what was going on than they did. But yeah, it was just a very surreal experience. I remember that a couple days after October 7th, we had a vigil on campus. Probably about 100 or 150 students were there. It was a joint program between all the Jewish organizations on campus. The president of the university was there, which I always think back to now. I noticed and I commented to somebody how back then it was a given that he would attend something like this as the president of the university. And since then, unfortunately, things have become much more complex for whatever reason. And I'm not sure that he would make the same decision today, just with the developments that happened since then and how it's, for whatever reason, became a matter of politics.
So can you elaborate on that? We saw about the encampments. We've spoken to Chabad from some of the other universities in Illinois. What was that experience like at the University of Chicago?
So it's interesting. We found out about a week before Pesach that they were planning an encampment at East Chicago. Um, University administration was made aware of that. They kind of said that they have it under control on their end. They didn't really share what kind of plans they had. At that point, we did have some idea from some other universities of what those encampments looked like. The encampment went up on the first day of Shvi Shel Pesach, the second half of Pesach, the 2 day of Yom Tiv. So it was the first day, which I don't know if it was done on purpose, but it made it very difficult for us to kind of have any sort of presence or response of any sort because of the holiday. So we had no phones, we had no access to email, like we didn't really notify parents or garner support from alumni or whatever it was. Students were devastated, and I'm pretty careful to not use the safe card in the sense that some campuses, students were not safe physically. At East Chicago, we didn't feel that. They were safe physically, although they were very intimidated. Students felt and continue to feel unwelcome. They feel like there's a very loud voice and a lot of effort and time and money and resources going into making sure that they don't feel comfortable and they feel intimidated and they feel responsible for whatever anybody dreams up may or may not be happening. So we found out how it's even more important that we are a strong community. I mean, what we did during the encampment, I mean, it ended up being a little comical because we felt like the best thing we could do is just be there. So that when students walk through the quad, they might see this, anti-Semitic hate fest going on, but at least they see a Chabad table where they can just wrap tefillin if they want, or just get a hug or say hello, or just see us there. And the university student paper, the Chicago Maroon, which until then nobody ever refreshed more than once a month, and people were nonstop refreshing it for the updates, every minute. They found it necessary to say the Chabad people have arrived on the quad, or there are now 9 members of the Chabad. Although they did go over to my brother-in-law at some point, and he said that, please do not categorize this as a counter protest. We're here for Jewish students. We are not counter protesting whatever they're doing there. So it was a tough week. I thought it would last much less time. Ended up being up for 8 or 9 days, at which point the university dismantled it at 4 o'clock in the morning, without any arrests. So.
Okay, now fast forward to this trip to Israel. We know that the women went a few weeks ago. We had a shlucha from the University of South Carolina share her experience. And, men are Jewish too. And, you're not just the husband of the wife, you're, person too. So you also were part of this group going to Eretz Yisrael of Chabad on campus shluchim. Where did this idea come from? How many shluchim went? Where did they come from? Walk us through pictures, anything you can share. We're very eager to hear about what it was like for you to be there in Eretz Yisrael in that capacity. Was this your first time? Lay it on us, my brother.
Sure. I was in Israel twice before. I went with my family about 10 years ago or so. And then I was there again 2 years ago with my wife. We had one 10-month-old baby then. This was the first time going back since then, of course, after October 7th. I don't know where the idea necessarily came from. We have a conference every year, like the women do, usually about 2 days in New Jersey or upstate New York. And this year they decided to do it in Israel. And I guess you can't do it just for 2 days. So it ended up being a 5-day, Wednesday noon through Sunday late evening. We were about just under 200 rabbis from 14 countries, mostly the United States, followed by a large group from the UK, Europe, about 10.
All campus shluchim, is that correct?
All on different campuses, yeah. About 10, group of 10 from Argentina. And for Shabbos, we were joined by about 30 families of Chabad on campus rabbis in Israel. There's about 30 campuses that have a Chabad presence. So that was the idea. That was the trip. I have some pictures. I mean, the trip was saturated. It took quite some time to process. Um, I'll share some highlights, and then I'm happy to answer any questions if people have
Sure.
questions.
Thank you. And pictures, we love pictures.
So let me share my screen here, and you'll let me know if this
Yeah,
is
we see it.
working.
Yep, we see a guy with a microphone.
Great. So we got there on Wednesday. We did a couple of things on Wednesday, but the one thing I wanted to highlight was we went to the Tel HaShomer Medical Center, Sheba Medical Center, which is the largest medical facility in Israel. Just to like imagine the size, there's about 25,000 people, Jewish people that are there at any given time, because it's not just a hospital, it's numerous hospitals. There's a whole rehab center, which is where we went. Um, it's basically a city. There's 4 or 5 Chabad shluchim just for the Sheba Medical Center.
Wow.
That's how busy it is. So we heard from 3 wounded soldiers. This first soldier, I don't remember his name. I can find it in my notes, but the story with him was that he is part of an intelligence unit um, based in right near Tzfat. And for whatever reason, a couple of months ago, he was working in an environment that could not be protected. So he wasn't like in a secure location. Um, and they heard an air raid siren of a rocket coming from the north. He jumps out of bed, and as he runs outside, he realizes he has 2 places to go. He can either run straight to the shelter or run to the right. And he doesn't know why he had this intuition. He ran to the right. And about 2 seconds after that, the rocket had a direct hit on where he would have been if he would have ran straight.
Wow.
Um, he had hundreds of pieces of shrapnel throughout his body, many operations, a lot of nerve damage. And as he was lying there, he said to himself that he had as a wife, he has a child, and he just before that found out that his wife's expecting another child. Um, he promised himself that he's going to make it for his son, and he's going to get all of his strength back, that he's going to be able to throw up his son in the air again. Those are the words that he used. And he committed to wanting to do more family things, in particular, having Friday night dinner.
Wow.
I don't think he's religious, but this is something that was very special to him that he wanted to go back to having.
Yeah.
I don't remember his name, but this is another soldier we heard from. His name is Mayan. He's 45 years old. He, on October 7th in the morning, he got a call from his brother-in-law who had a family friend that was in Kibbutz Nir Oz and said that my family is barricaded in the safe room. You need to come help us. There are terrorists outside. And he says, okay, I'm coming. He gets in the car. All he has is his pistol. He starts driving down to the border, and he realizes that he's not going to make it to the border because there's roadblocks and the IDF is blocking. People can't get down there. So he made it as far as Sderot. He got to Sderot. There was a bit of a mobile civilian command unit that was set up in this town hall. They gave him a rifle that was taken from a soldier that was wounded, and he went with another 2 people. They never made it to Nir Oz. He didn't say what happened to his brother-in-law's friends, but he said they were there for 2 weeks in the south, finding terrorists. They would follow footsteps, tracks. Some of them they would find almost hostages, people that were being led to Gaza but then managed to escape. And they followed tracks all the way to the border fence, at which they didn't go further. But basically, they were able to see the path that people were taken hostage. So it was a very obviously traumatic experience for him. The story of how he got injured, clearly he lost both of his legs. Um, he's a navigator. So his job is that he goes in first and he gives everyone directions. He's the GPS. So he was with a unit in Khan Yunis, and they got intelligence that there's terrorists that will come out of a tunnel and attack their little group. So they start searching for the tunnel. They're going from house to house looking for the tunnel opening. They finally found the tunnel opening in a bedroom in one of the houses. And as soon as they open the cover, he notices that there's a security camera in the room, and he realizes that it's a trap. It's too late. He grabs the camera, and the whole house explodes and collapses. He and his friend were both buried under the rubble. They were evacuated to a mosque, which was next door, which IDF was using as a bit of a field hospital. His friend was pronounced dead, and they were checking the time to notice what time it was to pronounce him dead as well. And he said he doesn't know what it was. He said he in his mind, it's the prayers from Jewish people all over the world. Those were his words. That somehow he made it, and he was evacuated via helicopter. This is about 7 or 8 months ago. He said he's getting prosthetics next month, and as he said, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to hike and bike and run and do whatever a 45-year-old father of 8 does.
Right.
That was him. Any questions, or should I just keep going?
You could go. If somebody wants to unmute and jump in, please do, but we want to be respectful of the rabbi's time. We're just mesmerized by what you're showing us. But if somebody wants to unmute and jump in with a question, please do. But Rabbi, please keep going and show us some more. I'm absolutely fixated on your every word.
So I don't know if you've seen a picture like this. This is outside the city of Sderot. In this picture, if you look to the far, can you see my cursor?
Yeah, we do.
So that's Gaza right there. That area is actually Beit Hanun, which is the first area that the IDF went into. The border fence is right here. Can't really see it, but this is the border of Gaza. We're about 800 meters from the border. You can't see it in this picture, but we did see and feel bombings from here. It's not very active here because what you're looking at here is like Jabalia and Shajaya and Gaza City, whereas more of the activity is down south, down this way, near Rafiach and Khan Yunis. Whoops. This is a local who spoke to us, who lives in Sderot. And he explained to us something very interesting, which I did not know, is that people talk about the police station in Sderot. I'm not sure if you've heard the stories, but I'll get to that in a minute. Hamas's intent with Sderot was very different than in the kibbutzes. In the kibbutzes, the intent was clearly just to massacre and destroy and burn everything. Sderot is a big city, and their intention with Sderot was obviously to murder and massacre, but they wanted to take over the city. So they came to both the entrance and the exit. They went straight for the police station, for the fire station. That's why there were no ambulances answering. They tried to take over all of the, key elements of the municipality and effectively take over the city. So you don't have as many people that were killed relative to the kibbutzes, and you don't have as much damage to buildings or just burnt homes because they operated a bit differently. Something that I didn't know. We did visit this site in Sderot. This used to be a big building. This was the police station of Sderot. Again, I'm not sure how much or the stories you may have heard, but the short story of this is this man right here did not allow us to take pictures of his face. He was a member of the civilian protection of Sderot. On October 7th morning, he gets a WhatsApp text in the group that there are with the video of the infamous white pickup trucks. They're driving down the streets of Sderot. Like I said, they came straight to the police station. And he came from this area here, right where my cursor is, right behind this wall. As soon as he comes out, he sees that he starts getting shot at. One thing I'll go back a second is he said that when he got the text message, he said to his kids, to his son, I'm not sure who else, and his wife, that I'm leaving the house. Do not open the door for anybody, even for me, even if I say it's for me, until you see a picture of me that I WhatsApp to you. So they said, okay, he leaves. At this point, he comes, and down here, there were a couple of cars And he notices a very famous video that came out later where the Suiza girls, there was basically a car with a family here who the father and the mother were in the front. They had two girls in the back. The father was killed by terrorists. A Bedouin driver came to help them and to try to get them to safety, but then he and the mother were killed. So when this police officer said he came to the car, he saw that there were bodies in there. He said he just left because there's nothing I can do here, and I need to find cover. Much later on, a few hours later, he heard crying from the car, and he realized that there were girls there, and they were evacuated and they were saved. There were 5 or 6 police officers that fought here. They were fighting against 26 Hamas terrorists that barricaded themselves in the police station. They brought matzah, they brought water. The terrorists were planning on staying. And they realized at a certain point that the best plan would be to just keep them contained in the building, because if they get out, it'll be a disaster. They kept them contained until Motzei Shabbos, Saturday night, almost 24 hours after they entered the city. The IDF brought a tank and they basically flattened the whole police station. So that's the story. There were, I think, 5 or 6 police officers and 70 civilians that were killed in Sderot. That's me. And this sign says, Kan Yukam Asar HaNitzcha, which is translated in English, a memorial will be established on the site. Yeah, that's any questions?
This is all on the first day that you're showing us?
So no, Sderot is the second day. Thursday morning, we went to Sderot. So the only thing, Wednesday was the hospital and a few other things. I don't have time for everything. But Thursday was the busiest day. So Thursday morning was Sderot. This is a very interesting picture that a colleague of mine took. This is on Route 223, which Route 223 was basically conquered by Hamas on October 7th. This is a road that runs, I should have uploaded a photo on Google Maps, but it runs alongside the border of Gaza and Israel. And basically anybody that was on Route 223 on October 7th did not make it out. This is where there were trucks and full Hamas terrorists back and forth. This is the road that many of the kibbutzes are, right off of. So the reason why this picture struck me is if you notice that it's been 9 or 10 months since people have really come back, and this was some sort of field, but it's clearly dilapidated and not been taken care of, and that is one of the, I guess, consequences of what's going on in Israel currently. I found this picture to be important too. Most people don't really see pictures like this. This is the Nova site, the entrance at least, and it kind of feels like a state park when you drive in there. It's kind of what it is. It's very hard to imagine that 364 young Jews were killed here. Not right in this spot, but this is the entrance to the park. Everyone sees the more famous pictures like this this also is not the actual spot where the festival was, but this is where they've kind of created the memorials. But when you drive in here, it feels very surreal that this is where, such terrible atrocities occurred. I kept reading the stories after October 7th. People had all these different, they were telling over their experiences that they went and they ran and they hid behind trees and they hid in ditches. I never really pictured, but this kind of is, people ran into the forests and tried to hide. Yeah, so this is part of the Nova site. We went there, we had a bit of our own presentation. We heard from these 2 wonderful Jews. I don't remember their names. That's in my notes as well. The one on the right is a local. He lives in the Re'im area near the site of the festival. He said on Friday night, he put his kids to bed and he promised them that if they go to bed nicely, they're going to go on a trip in the morning. And then at 6:29, when all the rockets came over, as this boy described, he was at the festival. that the sky was covered in rockets, and they thought, "Oh, rockets, rockets, let's run," without realizing that that was only the first thing. So this man over here, when he heard the news of what's going on, he took his car, he drove to the festival site, and basically spent the entire day getting by WhatsApp. He would get a location of where wounded people were. He would go pick them up and bring them to the hospital. And he basically did this for dozens and dozens and dozens of people, saved countless lives. One of the people that he picked up was this boy.
Wow.
This boy was at the festival with a friend and both of their girlfriends. They got to the festival, he said, around midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. And he was one of the first cars to leave the festival. They were actually able to leave. There weren't any like the roadblocks or car, there was before terrorists actually got to the site. And what happened to them was that they Route 223, group of terrorists who shot, as far as they know, 50 or more bullets at the car. The girls were sitting on one side, the boys were him and his friend. He was driving, his friend was behind him. The girls were instantly killed. He and his friend survived. They kept driving until the car died, about some time later. At that point, they just hid in a ditch for hours until this man here came and saved them.
You mentioned there were rabbis with you from all over the different world, different countries, and so on. Did you speak with them? Did they have the same issues on their campuses in Argentina and in England and so forth? Or was that confined to the US campuses? You showed a picture there of all of these different rabbis from all over the world. What was it like in the conversation amongst all the shluchim on campus, from campus shluchim around the world?
That's a good question. I think I didn't have so many personal conversations about that, in the sense that, when you see this all day,
Yeah,
your conversations are focused on, I guess, this itself and what our job is and what our mission is. I will say is that what I wanted to get to right after this, and this is connected, is that one of two things could have happened by visiting the Nova site. One is that we go there and leave very depressed. And I'm not sure who it was, but the design of the program we experienced, which I want to describe in a moment, was anything but that. That with all the pain and with all of the shock and the trauma to see this, we left on a high. And there were other people there that were not part of our group that kind of took part in our presentation. And one of my colleagues from Kansas University, Rabbi Zalman Tachtel, he spoke on this stage right after these boys, and he shared a very interesting message. He basically shared that what takeaway do we have from this? We take away that it was Simchas Torah morning, and the Baal Shem Tov says that when a Jewish person is thirsty, physically thirsty, it's an indication of the thirst of the soul. And so he said in a parallel, these young Jews were not very holy in this lightest. They were, partying on Simchas Torah, but that was really an indication of the desire of the soul to dance. And they were killed while dancing on Simchas Torah just because they were Jewish, for no other reason. And the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, says that when a person is killed just because they're Jewish, which is called Al Kiddush Hashem, sanctifying God's name, their body is not purified. They are not buried in shrouds. They're buried as is, which I never knew. And the reason for that is because we're demonstrating that the act of giving their physical life for Hashem, that itself is the greatest ascent for the body. And the body itself is holy. So he challenged us that when we go back to our campuses, we should look at each Jewish person on our campus in the same light, that even in their bodies and even the way they are, that they might not look like the holiest of people, but they are intrinsically connected and they're holy. And that's how we should perceive them.
Amazing. Wow. Okay, Rabbi, I mean, I'm enthralled and sad, but like you said, uplifted at every moment. We do want to be respectful of your time. We really appreciate it. The pictures are so powerful in your story. We're just going to give a chance if anybody does want to unmute and make a quick, brief question.
I have a question. I have a
Please.
question. Rabbi Mendel,
Sure.
thank you very much for joining us and telling us your experience. When you were in the encampment, I assume that you probably knew the Jewish kids that were the Jews for Palestinians. Did you know them? I mean, were those kids that used to sometimes come to Chabad? I mean, did they know you?
So the short answer is I didn't see any of them there, although I knew who was there. I don't know all of them. Yeah, there were definitely students that were very close to us before all of this happened. That range from explicitly telling us that they're not coming anymore for things that we believe, to students who haven't told us that explicitly, but through a little bit of investigative work, we can figure that that's why they haven't come since, and it's very painful. But yeah,
But what is it that why wouldn't, well, I mean, it's not why wouldn't they come to Chabad, but I mean, like, were these kids like extremely liberal? Were they religious? I mean, I just don't understand.
It doesn't make sense.
you're right. It doesn't make sense. I don't know. I think, there are students that have not come back that my message to them was, hey, I'm happy to learn Torah with you and we can do mitzvahs together. And whatever each of us believes, we don't have to talk about things we don't agree on, which is really what we do all the time.
True.
When I offer a student to study Torah, I don't ask him what he thinks, which sports team he goes for. And if he's a Cubs fan, I can't really talk to him because, down south with the White Sox. It's irrelevant, but that unfortunately hasn't been the case.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
By the way, I got a question. When do you are kids still on campus, or are you on our break right now? And do you have how many kids come on the normal Shabbos during your regular school session?
It's a good question. We're on break. There are some grad students that are here. During a regular week, you'll have between 40 and 100 students, sometimes more. Last year we had almost 200 for a Shabbos. It really depends. A typical week will have probably between 40 and 80.
Wow.
W. Huda, you got your hand raised there. You got to unmute, and let's try to keep it brief to keep the rabbi's time, but unmute and lay it on us, my brother. But you got to unmute.
Okay, am I unmuted?
You are unmuted. We hear you, Houston. Go ahead.
All right, I'm a big fan of bumper stickers, and one of them says, "Think globally but act locally." So I know that there's all this stuff going on, Hamas and Hezbollah and this, that, and the other. But I'm real concerned about people that I know that I'm a student. I have a degree and a couple of hours in postgraduate, and these people, these white people that I see wearing this Yasser Arafat, dish towel on their head. I mean, I think of these as like the children of people that maybe I've gone to school with. What is going through their mind? I mean, I've read about, anti-Semitism in, ancient Spain, the Inquisition. What is going through these kids' mind now? The anti-Semitism is blatant. What's going on? Can just like in,
Rabbi,
20 words or less,
Okay.
what
Rabbi, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, you have to ask them. I agree. I think they're crazy. They range from misguided to very, very hateful.
They're just there for the party, or they're really hateful?
They're both.
Yeah. Okay, Rabbi, we want to thank you tremendously for, and I know I told you 15, 20 minutes and you went almost 40 minutes. So thank you for that. Appreciate it. I hope that we didn't take.
Thank you, Rabbi.
time. We really appreciate
Sure.
it. And thank you, and keep doing what you're doing, because it's so important, and even more important now for these young students who do want to identify with their Yiddishkeit, that they know that Chabad is there for them. Thank you for what you're doing. Keep on doing it. And good night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow nights.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
for having me.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
It's most
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Thank you.